Thank you, Judge Agostini. Wanted to ask you if a parent is struggling with their child's addiction, they've tried taking them to Father Anthony and Dr. George, and now it's been a month or a year, and they haven't committed, the child hasn't committed a crime to the outside world. At what point does the parent involve the police, and how long can they keep trying with the therapy, with the doctors, knowing that one day they could overdose and die?
Well, most of the cases that I see, I will tell you, are driving cases. A person's driving drunk or they're driving drugged, especially with pills. The police will stop them, they'll find the pills, or random pills, pills with no prescription bottle, and that's how a lot of people get caught. If a person's using drugs, they're in your house and they haven't committed a crime yet, well, that's good that they haven't committed the crime yet, but I sort of say it's only a matter of time, because again, everybody drives, and that's when a lot of these people are stopped, because either they're leaving or driving really badly and they come to the police attention. I would say that, like Father said, don't give up on anybody. I think, first of all, the police can be a tremendous resource. There are several programs right now. I think one of them is called Hugs Not Cuffs, something like that, where if you go to the police and you tell them you're in need of treatment, they will assist you to some degree. I think all of these places, these ladies here at the table, there are resources here. The problem is getting the young person to the treatment. That's why I see a lot of them in the courtroom, because they're refusing treatment and they won't go. How can you make them go? I think you have to, assert whatever parental pressure you can to make them to go. And, a lot of young people have access to cars and money and clothes. I think you gotta shut it down and try in your power, whatever you can, to make them go to treatment and withhold maybe some of the luxuries in their lives. There's no easy answer to that question. I think it depends on the young person and the personality, and I'm not telling you that it's easy, but I think that as parents, you can talk to as many people as you can, and sometimes you bring a group of people together. Maybe it's some of your relatives, some uncles and aunts, and you confront the young person and you tell them this is the way it's going to be, and they will be going to treatment. The problem is, if somebody goes unwillingly, I don't know how much they're going to get out of it if they don't recognize that they have a problem and that they're going to make their best shot. I will tell you, one of the best programs out there is free, and that's AA and NA. The 12-step program is outstanding. The defendants, the probationers that I send, Narcotics Anonymous and Alcoholics Anonymous, rave about the program. They tell me it keeps them sane. They go to meetings every day, and it really holds you accountable. But there are a lot of programs. You have to figure out which one is right for you, and you also have to reach the point where you're saying you need help. The person that won't admit they need help, that's going to be a tough road.
Thank you. Thank you. I have next Ronnie Fumia here. He's district manager for Rite Aid. He was assigned by Governor Snyder to head the pharmaceutical, is that correct? It's called the pharmaceutical? The what?
Pharmacy and Therapy.
The Pharmacy and Therapy Committee. There's some recent lawsuits against a family business, and I think it was on the East Coast. It's one of the main suppliers of pain medications. The lawsuit says that this pharmaceutical company aggressively pushed pain medications, and forcing doctors to prescribe high amounts. And just like Dr. George said, there's more pills than people in some cities. So some people blame the pharmaceutical companies and the doctors, and Rite Aid happens to be in the middle. It's natural that pharmacies are taking the charge and reversing this trend. But I just wanted to know what are your plans to decrease the supply of the drug? What are the plans of the committee under Governor Snyder? And what do you think will happen in the next 5 to 10 years?
Hello, good evening, everybody. So my name is Ronnie Fomia. I've been a pharmacist here in the state of Michigan since 1999, and then during that time period, I have seen the changes. This didn't happen overnight. This has been a process that has happened over the past 15 to 20 years. So there's a couple different things, and keep this point in mind. 75 to 80% of heroin-addicted individuals, this is gonna shock you, started by abusing prescription painkillers. So think about that. Since that same time period, from 1999 to today, prescription painkillers have been prescribed, have also increased by 4 times. So there's a lot of drugs that are being pumped out into the market. So think about that. During that same time period that prescriptions keep getting written for these type of drugs, deaths for these type of drugs have also quadrupled. So in essence, we created a lot of the issues that we face today. Remember that, 75 to 80% of heroin-addicted individuals at one point abused prescription drugs. So there's this thing out there that people think that just because a prescription is written, that it is perfectly safe to take in any excess. That's not true. So a lot of these people started by going in for a simple surgery, going in and getting addicted to these painkillers. And here's the problem, is that when they moved on to heroin today, the problem that you're seeing this huge spike in people dying is because heroin is being laced with powerful synthetic drugs called fentanyl and carfentanil. It's not like these drug dealers care what's in heroin, right? They're not like thinking, well, okay, it's like a prescription drug. These drugs are being laced with these powerful synthetic drugs. And the main pathway that people don't realize that people die from these overdoses is they literally stop breathing. The same receptors in the brain where these drugs work, they also regulate breathing. So these people literally stop breathing. And it's a shame. We created a lot of the issues that we face today. So what do we do as a community? What do we do as a pharmacist? What do we do as doctors? So there's a lot of different things that we need to look at. And as you as a community, as us as a community, well, we have to look at the signs. We ignore too many signs. As I said, I have been a pharmacist for many years. I haven't practiced in stores. I've been a district manager for a big part of that. But guess what? There's not one day that people that don't come into my pharmacies that are addicted. There's not one day, whether it be West Bloomfield, whether it be Novi, whether it be Detroit. Every single one of my stores, there's addicted individuals every single day that we have to turn away or that we have to reach out to the prescriber to say something is wrong. This is a major problem that we can no longer ignore. Too many people are dying needlessly, and we need to change that course. But again, remember what I said, 75 to 80% of heroin-addicted individuals started by abusing prescription pain pills. That's a shame. We need to do something about that. So that stigma piece that we talked about as what we can do, don't hide it, get people involved, because there's 3 guarantees that I make in every single one of my lectures that I give. Here are the 3 guarantees. If a person gets addicted to heroin today, because of the fact that it's laced with either fentanyl or carfentanil, here are the 3 guarantees. That the person will overdose, they'll go to jail, or they're gonna die if we don't intervene. Those are the 3 guarantees. Couple things that you need to know about. So we made some changes recently in the state of Michigan. If you are suffering or know someone that is at high risk that's addicted to opioid pain pills, you can go up to almost any pharmacy now, any pharmacist, as long as the pharmacist is registered with the state of Michigan, as long as they're trained, you can request a drug called Narcan, naloxone. What that does is if somebody overdoses on opioids, if you have a loved one that's addicted, and that they're at high risk, you can now get it over the counter. Just like a flu shot, you can walk up to the pharmacist and request Narcan. That is powerful.
Just want to ask you a question. If a family member goes to the pharmacist and asks for Narcan, is there a chance that their relative will be arrested?
Absolutely not. The governor recently, this is part of the changes that the governor made. So this came out of his task force, that any eligible individual, whether you could go up to the pharmacy and say, well, it's for my friend down the street, the pharmacist now is able to give you Narcan. What Narcan does is if somebody goes into an overdose and they stop breathing, you can get the nasal version or the injection version, and within 2 to 3 minutes, it usually reverses out the opioid overdose situation, where they're able to breathe again and allowing EMS to arrive. The problem that we face today is that because of the fact that these heroin is being laced with fentanyl and carfentanil, these very, very potent. Carfentanil is an elephant tranquilizer, by the way, not even used in humans. The problem that we face is that when we're giving Narcan, it's taking 4, 5, 6 doses to reverse an opioid overdose because of that. Regardless, you're able to get it, okay? A lot of insurances, some insurances cover it, some don't. It can range from $150 to $250, but there are coupons out there as well. So please be aware of that. As far as overall, prescription drugs, please be aware of this from a pharmacist's perspective. Those prescriptions that are sitting in your medicine cabinet, Vicodin, Norco, hydrocodone, whatever it is, if they're sitting in your medicine cabinet, you can take those prescription pills to get them out of your house. Almost every single police station in the state of Michigan today has prescription take-backs. No questions asked. You can drop them off at the police station and they will take those prescriptions back from you and they will properly dispose of them for you. So,
on that point, I just wanted to ask, why don't they just flush them down the toilet?
okay, good point. So the question that the doctor asked is, why don't we just flush them down the toilet? The reason why is twofold. One, it's possibly end up in our water supply, and we don't want to do that. So again, it's one of those things that where we have to properly dispose these medications, and there's a pathway. But again, please, those prescriptions, a big chunk of these people that are getting addicted is the grandma goes in for surgery. She uses 10 tablets out of the 100 that the doctor gave her, and they sit in her medicine cabinet. So guess what? Kids are then walking to the medicine cabinets. Oh, look, grandma has Vicodin. I'm going to start taking Vicodin. A large percentage of young children today start like that. Get those prescription drugs. That point I made, please, last point. 75 to 80% of heroin-addicted individuals started by abusing prescription drugs. We need to do something about that. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up. What do you think the outcome will be?
So again, the reason why we're seeing this huge spike of people dying, heroin has been around a long time. The problem that we see is that they're mixing heroin with fentanyl and carfentanil. There's 2 reasons they're doing that. Because of the fact they're able to smuggle, it doesn't take as large quantity, and also they want to keep people addicted to these drugs. I don't see this getting any better until we start with the root cause of limiting how many of these pain pills are hitting the market. There are certain laws that are happening right now. One law that's pending is preventing doctors from prescribing more than, in acute situations only, prescribing more than a 7-day supply of opioid painkillers. So that's one pending law that's out there. The other law that's pending is forcing doctors to utilize a system called MAPS. Only 30% of doctors utilize MAPS in the state of Michigan right now, where it forces them to check a system to see if somebody's on a pain pill. Only 30% of doctors are on that. So that's also pending. That's going to hopefully be put into place very soon. But this is going to get worse before it's going to get better until we address the root cause.
Are there any pharmaceutical solutions, such as creating a Vicodin pill that will stop working or become neutralized after, say, 6 months?
Great question. So one of the things that's coming out of President Trump's task force in Washington, he assigned Governor Christie as being a part of the task force. So one of the things that they're working on is 2 things. They're annual prescriber training, for one, to really get to the root cause of what's happening. The second thing is also developing new drugs, funding for new drugs that are non-opioid type of drugs that are not as addictive, because of the fact that also, to your point, the question that you asked, there was 20 years ago when I started practicing, there was a drug called OxyContin, still is. They were marketing this drug to the public, saying it is only 1% chance, Purdue Pharma was the manufacturer, still is, that this drug is not only 1% of individuals can get addicted to it. Well, guess what? We know that's not true. So we're trying to change a culture over the past 20 years of how we got to this point. There's a long history. It's a 20 years in the making, and to answer your question, it's not going to be fixed overnight.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Congressman Clint Kesto on the left, he was a member of the parish in this church. He comes to this church. He's a local from this community. He also is a prosecutor in Detroit that has dealt with this firsthand. And as I said, he is a legislator, so Judge D'Agostino applies the law. Congressman Kesto, with input from constituents, writes the law. I wanted to ask you, what role does the law have in this? Did the law help did the law help create this problem? Could we change the law where we can control this epidemic?
Thank you, Dr. Francis. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Glad to see such a big crowd. My name is Clint Kesto, and I want to thank the CAAHPs for putting this together, Chaldean American Health Professionals, and for the panel that is here. They did a great job. But what do? I'm a legislator in the state of Michigan. Ronnie Fumia, who spoke about a couple of the laws, those are the laws that we enact, we pass, I vote on them. Some of them are ones that I've introduced, and I'll get to that. And some are that my colleagues have, and we're working through the House of Representatives to get things done. And this has been over the past 3 terms that I've been there, as well as previous to that. But we've really seen this opioid epidemic, this abuse of prescription pills that leads to heroin overdoses only over the last few years, as you heard. But I know I see a lot of parents in here. You know, I've been a prosecutor, had the title of that, been a representative, had the title of that. But I think the best title we have is parents, is mother and father. And we have to look after our children because they come from us. They're our blood, they're our family, they're everything to us. So I'm glad to see so many parents here because this is a very important issue. And the President, Donald Trump, called this a national crisis. It's not just here in Michigan. It's not just in our community, in our neighborhood. It's across the country. This is a problem. And just because we're Chaldean doesn't mean it doesn't affect us. In fact, we see what, like every week, every other week, unfortunately, on Facebook, that somebody has passed away because of an overdose. You recognize that, right? Every week, every other week. Father Anthony, you see it? You see the funerals that come through either this church or through our diocese. It's terrible. It's a problem. So whose fault is it? Is it the doctor's fault? Because they prescribe so many of these pills? Yes. That's one. Is it the pharmaceuticals' fault, like Ronnie spoke about, Purdue Pharmaceutical? That's one. Maybe it's our community's fault because we don't care about what's happening to our kids. That one? Maybe, right? But despite whose fault it is, that's not what we need to come together and point out. It's not their fault or their fault or their fault. We have to come up with solutions to prevent it from happening. How many of you have children that played sports or are in sports now? Right? Everyone. Like hockey, basketball, football, soccer. You know, maybe about the only sport that you can't really get injured in, or you probably could, I guess, golf, right? Tennis, any of these, even those ones that you don't think your kid will have an injury from, you will have an injury. And then you talk about the friends. You got to watch out which friends your kids are hanging out with so they're not abusing pills and get your kid addicted. But let me tell you this story. Student athlete, great grades, great athlete. She has her tonsils removed. Tonsils are wisdom teeth. All of you have children, you'll either have their tonsils removed, wisdom teeth, at some point. She's maybe 18 years old. Scholarship in college. Okay? Great kid, good friends. Doctor prescribes her pills for pain medication, for having her tonsils removed or wisdom teeth removed, and before you know it, she's addicted to heroin. Just like that. That's how quick it happens. Great kid, never does drugs, doesn't drink, studies, is an athlete, goes in for surgery, not even an injury because of being an athlete, just can happen to anyone. Those are the things we have to watch. And I don't think when you talk about addictions that these individuals that are addicted want to be addicted. I think they want help. So what can you do? First of all, check with your insurance company. Maybe they'll be able to provide and pay for treatment for your child, your relative, whoever it may be. What kind of treatment is there? Inpatient, you send them off to a location, they stay there. Outpatient, maybe you take them to get therapy. But the number one thing, like they talked about, is a support structure. Don't give up on that person that you know. We talked about Narcan. We're trying to move. Michigan is a state where you have to go and get a prescription to get the Narcan. What is Narcan? If somebody has an overdose, they put this nasal spray, they come back to life. Because of, as Ronnie said, it affects their breathing. That's what this thing is. We're trying to move so that you can purchase it easier. There's drug testing. I think the judge will tell you this about drug testing. You can go and get a drug kit. Just be careful, because there are also ways to manipulate the test. Maybe there's a drink. Maybe there's something else that they take to change what's in their system. You heard Ronnie Fumia talk about what's called carfentanil. Big word, a lot of letters. I don't even know how to spell it. I wrote it down, for sure I didn't spell it right. Where do you get carfentanil from? And heroin? Where do you get it from? Detroit, right? No, not just Detroit. Wolverine Lake is a little city inside of Commerce Township. It's right here. They arrested somebody on the road who had a large amount of carfentanil. What were they going to do with it? Mix it with other heroin, other products? Ship that poison off onto the streets, to our children. To our children, to our community. So, what causes it? You have to watch out also if there are certain signs of depression in those that you know. Depression, loneliness, mental health issues, and we can't brush it under the carpet as we do sometimes in the community, that there isn't really a problem. I live in the up there, this is not a big deal, it's just a little off. But these things also lead to trying to find outlets, whether it be alcohol, drugs, whatever it might be, prescription pills. So what are we doing in the state of Michigan as your legislator, as your congressman who's voting on things and enacting laws? Number one is this MAP system. What some people do is bounce from doctor to doctor to doctor, pharmacy to pharmacy to pharmacy, hospital, emergency room. This is an automated system. We put in tons of money. We're updating the system. We're trying to make it real time. This will cut down on the folks that are going out and getting these prescription pills and pushing them off onto your community members. Now sometimes, we've already done that. Another thing we did is called the Good Samaritan rule. You know what Good Samaritan is, right, Father? It's in the Bible.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, guys. That was great. They're alive. All right. Good Samaritan rule. Sometimes you may have your children or others with your children or whoever it might be that are together that are abusing drugs, whether it be heroin, prescription pills, and then somebody passes out. Now who's going to call the police? Nobody. I don't want to get in trouble. I'm using this stuff too. I don't want to call the police because Ronnie passed out. Let's just get out of here and leave him alone. We passed a law that says that if I were to call the police to get help for somebody who's overdosing, that I cannot be prosecuted because I'm doing a good deed to help somebody. So not that way it avoids what people used to do, is say, I'm not going to call the police at all. And if he dies, that's on him. So that's a good thing. Our officers are now going to have in their possession the Narcan. So we put in money so that they can all have Narcan on them. By the way, in West Bloomfield here, there have been more deaths from overdoses. West Bloomfield, our great township, very wealthy. More deaths from overdoses than anything else. Food for thought.